one of the worst people to get to speak on it, because I have a really poor memory, and there's a lot of others in this room who have had a lot more experience with bail than I have, but so I do appreciate the opportunity. Just some apologies for those that would like to be here. One, Dr. Deborah Snell, who's obviously the Academy Director. She had business in Auckland today, unfortunately. Also David Meeks, Chair Arron Williams from Catwalk Trust, Gerben de Jong, Bail's International Advisor, sends his regards and apologies. Raj, the BSU Clinical Director, Sally Nicholas, Ben Shaw from Rotary Club of Christchurch. I hope to be here today, but she's actually quite unwell, so it's nice of her to ring this morning. Also Professor Alistair Rothwell and Kate Russell, CEO of Canterbury Medical Research Foundation. So just acknowledge those people for taking the time to put their apologies in. So Bail, 10 years, and I was privileged enough to be working for the New Zealand Spinal Trust at the time, back in 2004, 2005, when there was talk about the Burwood having an academy of research, the Burwood Academy of Independent Living. And I guess it's always interesting to ask the question why, like why Bail? So anyone that's ever done a strategic development sort of project, you know the first thing you have to ascertain is why, because then that informs the what, how and when. Most of us, when you get up each day and we go about stuff, it's actually often good to stop and reflect, well why? You know, why am I living this life? Why am I doing it the way I do? Therefore, what am I going to do today? So that we live intentionally. So Bail, what is the why question? And the why question for Bail is that it's all about translating research into practice. So it's about promoting and informing independent living amongst those who have a serious injury, be it spinal or brain. And that is the sole purpose of Bail. And I think that flowed out of the vision of Professor Alan Clark all those years ago. And Julian Verkaaik, I guess, was fortunate, lucky, tortured to experience much of that journey with Prof Clark over the years. When did you start here, Jules? 2001? 2000. And so was a part of that whole conversation of establishing the New Zealand Spinal Trust. I understand Julian was sort of Prof's go-to man, his project manager, his lackey, his putting arms and legs and a voice on vision. So really, I just acknowledge and remember Prof Alan Clark today, because really it was his vision to see an academy committed to research that would inform the new paradigm of neurorehabilitation. And just take a moment to remember Prof, a formidable character. I'm no academic. Someone laughed, they know me well. But I'd like to quote one of the world's great and wise sages when they said, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better, it's not." Who was that great sage? Dr. Seuss, thank you. One of my heroes. And I just want to acknowledge everyone that's here and had a part to play in the 10-year journey of Bail. It's somewhere along the line you've cared an awful lot about what Bail stands for. You've been a part of putting energy and your business acumen or your clinical skills, your resources in behind the Burwood Academy of Independent Living such that it could grow to be the organisation it is today. And you know who you are, and I suspect that many, if not all of you here, have contributed in various ways to Bail, and on behalf of the board we thank you for your contribution. Now I look around the room, I think what Maddie's done in terms of helping us culturally. I've got George Scrimshaw who's here, and I know for a fact I can say he's pulled in at least $100,000 at least into Bail the last few years, so there's people like that have contributed significantly to Bail. We thank you. In terms a little bit more about the history, there's a few other people I want to mention, and there's always a risk when you start to mention people because I may miss people out, but I do want to acknowledge the role and place of the Rotary Club of Christchurch and also the Lamar Trust, because if it hadn't been for, back 10 years ago, I doubt whether Bail would have got established to the extent it did initially. So for those representatives here today of Rotary and Lamar Trust, we thank you for that. Also, to everyone that's been always present that have been a trustee over the past 10 years, thank you for your leadership and governance of Vale. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge two people that are here today that have given throughout these last 10 years and have both been made life members a couple of years ago of Vale, and that is Professor Chair Arron and also George Scrimshaw. Gentlemen over here, we'd just like to stand for a moment. I know you're both very humble. I'd just like to acknowledge these two life members of Vale. A couple of years ago, they received the special cellists, and I'm sure you haven't lost them here. But you, I guess, really see you as the fathers of Vale, and you've set a great example for all of us that follow.
It's great to see the progress you're making and coming here today, seeing all the new technology, and congratulations to the people with their PhDs. Well done.
Yeah, thanks, George. Also, someone that's not here is Anne Sinnott, who I believe has contributed significantly to Vale as well over the last decade. Anne's been one of those people quietly in the background who has been responsible, I believe, for nurturing new generation of researchers. Maybe, I was going to say a show of hands, who's been tapped on the shoulder by Anne to undertake some level of research over the last 10 years? Okay, wow, that's not insignificant. Plus those that aren't in the room. So Anne couldn't be here today, but I just also honour her for her quiet but deliberate contribution. I also challenge those that did raise their hands there that you have a responsibility to continue to pass that on. We do have a lead research role now, but it's just Johnny's role to be doing it, so I think it's up to others to be nurturing what Anne's been doing. Also, more recently with Debbie Snell, she has really, I believe, increased Vale's academic rigour and credibility amongst the academic world, and I just acknowledge Debbie for the work she continues to do. I have two presentations that I'd like to make today on behalf of the Vale Board, and the first one goes to Julian Verkaaik. So Julian, apart from being a good friend and a good bugger, that's not related to why he got the award. Yeah, cream, isn't it, of course? But Julian has been involved, like I said, right from the founding days of the Spinal Trust and of Vale with Prof Clark. And he was the first manager for Vale. He was a founding trustee, and then he's been board chair up until earlier this year. That's 10 years on the board. Julian's genius, passion and vision needs to be acknowledged today. Julian worked very closely with Prof Clark in those formative years, and his commitment to independent living, to the new rehabilitation paradigm, really exists at the core, I think, of Julian's being. I think it's not something he goes to work to do. I know him closely, and it's something he really believes in and has inspired that in many others. And so Julian, on behalf of the Vale Board, in acknowledgement of your genius, your passion and vision, your time on the board, if you'd like to come forward, we'd like to present you with the chance.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, that's great. It's the first time I saw one of these. I thought, oh my goodness, that's what a special acknowledgement. Thank you very much, Aaron and members. I haven't prepared anything, but on the way here I thought it's 2 words. It's a decade of Vale, and there's another word very similar to decade, which is decayed, and this is how my brain works, and it's a scary place. And I thought, from what we started out to do, what has changed around the core vision of Vale, and I think it really hasn't. It stayed true to purpose, and I think it's been a really pleasurable privilege to have been part of the journey. And thank you all for everyone who's carrying on and taking it to new places. Thank you very much.
The second presentation to tell us today is to a real gentleman. It's to Dunn. And he doesn't know about this, either to Julian. But I had the privilege of being on the board for a couple of years with Ian, and he really is a gentleman, someone who has offered genuine business acumen and a real poise and steadiness to the board. There's lots that go on, as you can understand, in the board environment, lots of opportunities, and just to have that poise and steadiness in such a gentlemanly way has been, I think, a real influence on the culture of the board and of Bail. Ian also was he did 9 years on the Bail board. 9 years, that's more than a life sentence. And was a founding trustee of Bail. Ian, I welcome you forward to say a few words and receive the chance. Let me say to Ian's been on the board initially representing Rotary Club of Christchurch and was a part of the establishment of Bail through the trust as well.
All those years ago, I can remember Professor Arron Perriam and others tapping on the door of Rotary, urging us as to what we could do for our bicentenary project. And we looked at a great number of projects, that is the club, looked at a great number of projects. One of them, fostered by Gary Moore, was indeed for the police tea kiosk in the square to be upgraded and renovated so that the kids of Christchurch could sort of see the position of law and their relationship in trying to help street children primarily. That didn't make the grade, primarily because Ellen and Clark had what we considered a much better offer. That offer was to be a supporter and to provide some guidance and knowledge as may be required to facilitate through our Rotary Club the needs and well-being of what Bail is going to be all about. And I think the real determination settled in my mind at least, and that happened to be my presidential year at the Rotary Club, was when the portable lift for Ellen wouldn't operate to take them to the first floor at the Community Trust building when they're above a certain restaurant, and George would know that restaurant. We physically lifted Ellen all the way upstairs, and he continued with the meeting as if nothing had ever happened. And I thought there was not only the willingness of a great man, and I knew a lot about Ellen at the time, but his ability to adapt and to get on with things really, really impressed me. So it is that after all these years that the Rotary Club is still involved, and I think the fresh blood that has just come to the table will serve Bail particularly well, and I know it's as a fact that the Rotary Club is delighted to be continuing to be a part of Bail, even though we set it up as a centenary project in the year, I think, 2003, right at the beginning of that year. So we were long in our decision making, and it took us nearly 2 years before we were able to confirm to Rotary International what our centenary project would be. And they, I'm sure, will be delighted that we're still continuing. To the trustees today, and particularly you, Arron, thank you very much, and fellow life members, George, and yep, forgotten, briefly, my apology. Congratulations, Howard's retirement.
Still busy as ever. Great to be here, Ian.
So thank you for your time today and for your thoughts as you move forward.
Just before we cut the cake, 10-year cake, which I'm going to ask actually George and Ted to come forward and do the cutting together like a new married couple. And we'll invite current and past trustees too to come and stand with us, and we'll get a picture. I'd just like to acknowledge that organisations, whether it be Bail or the Spinal Trust, they don't run on personalities, and they run on capability and passion and vision, all that good stuff. And there's a lot of other people in this room, from allied health workers to clinical, to clinicians, to health managers, to funders, all other third-party organisations that all contribute, and play the game in some way, that have all enabled the work of Bail to happen. when I talk about the work of Baal, work's never really interested me that much. I think it should be avoided as much as possible. But what the work of Baal is actually about that does excite me is it's about transforming lives. It's about independent living. And so the collective energy and efforts and excellence in this room goes towards that ends. Now that's exciting, yeah? That's worth getting up for. So thank you to everyone who's contributed. I'd like to invite Ted and George to come forward along with other trustees, and we're going to cut the cake, grin and grip, get a picture, and then we got one last presentation to make before we conclude the proceedings for today. So Chair will pass trustees, let's get out there.
That's you, Mr. Dunn.
That is very sharp microphones.